So let's call our meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. It's nice to see you all here. And again, thank you for your commitment to this board. I know that you guys are really busy. Everybody is either reorganizing or celebrating that they passed the budget or actually working really hard to having had the heartache of a vote not passed and working on the next steps for a second vote. So I know there's a couple of you with that. And we are all here, your peers and the staff we're here to support you. Today, I'm going to be sharing responsibilities with Megan because our board is actually reorganizing tonight. So she could kindly agree to do the second part of the meeting. I want to propose a small change to the agenda, and I'm wondering if we can move item 7 up to item 2 so that we can begin our meeting with a brief reflection on board norms. And the board norms were included in the packet. Could I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended unless there is?
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Suzanne. And second by Jim. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. See all hands up. Bart, welcome. Dwight, welcome. Okay. So I believe the ayes have it. So the agenda has been modified. We have a lot to go through today. So I'm going to jump right into that because we added that item with Sue and hopefully you guys had a chance, but we'll talk about that later. So if we're moving us into item 2, reflection and adherence to board norms, a reminder that we all had agreed to do this quarterly and take a moment to pause and check in how we're doing in living up to our norms and our commitments as established from our work together. So as we all have agreed and you guys all have experience in your boards, the norms guide our work in collaborating, governing for the Vermont School Boards Association. So to remind us to maintain that positive culture, understand and respect the different roles from the board, the staff, and to come prepared to meetings, ensure all voices are heard respectfully, honor our conflict of interest policy, and support collective decision of the board. That's just in case you didn't refresh your norms. So I was wondering if we could take a few minutes to help us. This will help us strengthen our work and also considering the conversations that we're going to have right after this. I want to propose that we do a short round robin, and I'll ask for a couple of sort of reflection questions and invite each of you and we'll go around or we can popcorn, depending. I know some of you are more willing than others, but I'm going to ask 3 questions, but don't feel like this is not for you to answer 3 questions. So it's a brief reflection, no more than 2 sentences if possible. And these questions are just to help you formulate your thoughts in what you want to reflect. I do think that it's important that everybody reflects in how you think we're abiding by our norms. So for the sample questions are, what is one norm that you think we're doing well with as a board? Another option is, what is one norm we could strengthen or be more mindful of moving forward? And the third one, is there anything that would help us to better support open, respectful discussions at our meetings? So does that make sense? Any questions with that? I don't see any nodding hands or any questions, or I'm gonna just ask for volunteers, and I'm looking at smiling Neil, so I'm going to jump in. And do you mind reflecting, Neil, or did I put you on the spot?
No, that's okay. I just
Okay,
might need you to repeat the
yeah, I was
so
just trying
the
to
first,
paste them right now.
yeah, if you drop them in the chat, that would be
But
even better.
yeah, yeah. So what
Um,
is one norm that you think we're doing well? What is one norm that we could strengthen or be more mindful as we move forward? And the last
yep.
one is there anything that would help us be better, help us better support open, respectful discussion in our meetings? And Amy was so kind to just drop them.
Yeah, so starting with what I think we do well, I think it's actually the first bullet point on the list is maintain a positive culture and understand the role of the board and the staff. Um, I find VSBA does that very well, which I think then leads to some very positive and productive conversations amongst the members of this board, even in cases when we don't all agree on something. I think we could at least talk about it, and have some productive conversations. What we could do better. What could we do better? I sometimes wonder, and it sort of puts it off on newer board members, if we do a good enough job in onboarding new folks. Um, if they feel that they've got a good understanding of what the VSBA does, how we operate, what their role is on the board. Um, just a thought, and I don't necessarily have the answer to that, but curious maybe what our newer board members think. And I'm sorry, the third question was.
Oh, it's okay. We just use one, to formulate a couple of sentences based on those three.
Okay.
But I'm happy to answer that question. But maybe I'll put Dwight on and just say, Dwight, how did you feel about your onboarding?
No, thank you. No, I felt really good about it. I felt very welcome, that's for sure. At my first meeting, and was able to join in at the legislative breakfast, and felt very, very good about that. So, yeah, I think so. I maybe the roles I could understand a little bit better, like Neil mentioned, but I think otherwise, I feel like I've been put right in very well. Thank you.
Anybody else that wants to reflect? Go, Clayton.
I walked in last year with a disagreement. I got named in the middle, and I walked in with a disagreement on your like right off the bat with some of the Act 73 stuff. And I was walking in, trying to ascertain why the statement was made that was made. I fell right in line, obviously, and I get the point of not publicly saying that you are wrong, but it's with this bush of information, it was really hard to catch up. And my onboarding was, here's 2 hours in a room with 4 ladies, and your next meeting is going, but also the world is on fire. So I had a little bit of a harder time catching up, but also I don't really always stop to listen. I just continue talking. So some of that's on me.
Thanks, Clayton. And Suzanne, you just unmuted yourself. What are you going to say?
I'll go with the board accountability process. I think thinking about boards I've served on, this board does a really nice job of doing self-evaluations. We don't always sometimes get to 100%, but we're pretty darn close. And I think that's really important in any board, is for it to look back and do its self-evaluation, figure out how well it's working or not working and what needs to be fixed. It's been so long since I was a new board member. I'm sure that the onboarding has probably changed a lot since I was tossed into the mix. I don't think there was much of an on board at that point. So I'm glad to hear that that part is doing much better than when I started. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Suzanne. Gaston?
Yeah, I think for me, I want to go into all voices are heard and respected, demonstrating civility. I think we do a really nice job of that, and I appreciate the opportunity to chime in when there are questions or concerns, and I think that's a really strong part of this board. As far as the other ones are really, I don't know. I guess I can leave it at that. I can tell you that I do take these norms seriously, and in fact, on our onboarding last night, I reflected back on how important having these norms written out is to this board, and I need to do that for my local board. Thank you.
Thanks, Gaston. And you guys can raise your hand to start volunteering, everybody, but Bart, Megan, Jim. Oh, Jim volunteered himself. He unmuted himself. Go, Jim.
Okay. No, I just, I want to point to, I'm repeating what others have said, but honestly, to me, one of the most important things as far as a norm that I think we do an extremely good job of following is being respectful, listening, and being open to hear different positions. And I that's really important to me because hey, my district has a position that's sometimes different than others, and I honestly, I really appreciate the willingness and the opportunity to speak, to those points, even if I know I'm not going to, necessarily, it's not necessarily going to be the VSBA position. It's the beauty of this board is that people will listen, they will be respectful, and and we'll come to the conclusion that we need, and I'll respect that. I think one of the tough things I've had over time, and we've discussed this a few times, is again, I 100% believe that refrain from saying that a VSBA position, if it conflicts with my own district's positions, I will never say the VSBA is wrong or anything. Where it gets a little tough is the old because you're also representing another board, and you just have to make sure that you're really being clear that you're not representing VSBA if you're representing something that's inconsistent. But that's the nature of being on these boards, and I think the VSBA board has been such a pleasure to be on because of the environment that we've been able to maintain.
Thank you, Jim. Bart, do you unmute it yourself?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that's been said. I do feel like overall this board does a really good job of staying up to date on the issues and reading materials and getting educated, which is I think important because this is really I view this board as a model board to take back to my own local board. I think I've made some comments around that in the past. So I do think that's something. It's hard to do like 100%, right? Like, but I think we do a pretty good job overall. And yeah, I think coming up with something we could work on that's tough to me. Maybe just becoming. I know we all listen very well, but just becoming even more comfortable with some very what might be discomforting dialogue, right? Where we have hard opposition. That's it.
Thanks, Bart. Let's see. Oh, Clayton, you have your hand up, but you already
So
went.
one thing that is
Go for it.
one thing that is happening right now is you change what's on the agenda. And so this meeting doesn't start with the same familiar beats. And so you're going to get different voices, maybe some to a degree, because you're not doing everything in the exact same order. So that might be one way to change things up is start with pull number 7 up not every meeting, but maybe number 7 is a little bit more energy for some other people. That's an observation from today.
Yeah. Megan, thanks.
Or I have one thing to add. I very appreciate everything else. I was looking at, I think this is right, but we're supposed to complete a self-evaluation annually, and I think we struggled to get that all done and get all that in. So that's something that I think we could do better. I could be wrong, but I feel like you had to extend the period for when you asked for feedback. So that's something that we could all work on, make sure we get 100% response next year.
Thank you, Megan. Yeah. Tara. Sorry, I don't want to put you in the spot, but I know. But I just feel that it's important that everybody, and I'm trying to keep watch of the clock too. So,
if you're going to put people on the spot, don't apologize for it first. Just put us on the spot.
It's just my nature. Sorry, I just can't help.
Honestly, like the second bullet point, I find this group of people to be a wealth of knowledge, and I always feel underprepared compared to everybody else because sometimes I don't know if it's just because everyone has more time than I do, or if it's just because you've been doing this work a lot longer than I have. But I walk away from every meeting like having learned something. So the fact that so many people are putting that kind of preparation into coming to a meeting once a month is really impressive.
Thank you, Dara. Okay, you guys can self-phone. Mark Claw.
I kind of agree with Tara. This board has really let me be tuned into the issues and having them current and being a resource to go back to my board and let them know what I've heard. And I think over time, Tara, you build up your contacts and you get to hear information that just kind of comes naturally out of this board. So there's a lot of value in this board around that. I'm not sure that's around board norms, but that's one of the positives of this board and why it's well worthwhile. I think we've done a good job this year in kind of turning around, listening to our constituents, and you guys have made a conscious effort to be much more representative in your communication, and I appreciate that, and that you recognized it. And that's a work in progress forever, but good progress this year. Thank you. That's what I got.
Thanks, Mark. Joe, and then Nancy, you're next.
So I'm not that, I haven't been here that long. I think this is my third year. I can't really speak to onboarding, but I have really been impressed with especially how everyone is paid attention to and heard. When I came on this board and I had no idea that the range of issues that affected other boards around the state. So this has been a real eye-opening experience, and things that I think are no-brainers for the area that I'm in really affect somebody else, and things that don't concern my region really concern other regions. And yet here we all are able to come together at the end of it all with a unified position and advocate for the entire state and all the boards. Even if your board might not be right in there because you're with something else, the VSBA comes across as pretty unified for the whole state, and that's impressive. You know, and that's enough.
Thank you. Nancy.
Okay, I'm sorry I came in late, so I don't know what the question is. What are you asking of us?
Nancy, you can think about it, but it's the 3 questions in the chat, and maybe if you came late, maybe you can't see them right now. We can repost them because sometimes when you come late, you can't see them. But we're just debriefing, reflecting in our norms. And I just copy pasted the questions again on the chat, and you can.
Okay, can you give me a few
think
minutes
about it, and
else?
I'm gonna think about it. And sure. I think we're missing Barbara and Michael Inners. Go ahead, Barbara. I'll mute yours. Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead. No, not missing. Like, you can reflect.
It's my turn. I apologize. I was a little late, but I have heard some of the folks that have spoken up, and I want to say similar. I mean, I agree with a lot of the things that are being said, and similar to Tara, I think it's very impressive to me that how engaged and prepared everybody is, and how dedicated they are both to their own board and to this board, and to the, what is really our mission at VSBA, which is to serve the school boards. I think, I think we weathered some difficulties, the first year when the whole discussion before Act 73 was passed. And I know there's still probably some schools who stopped their membership and haven't joined again. But I would like to think that the VSBA is proving to its value to most school boards around the state. I mean, certainly there's no question when it comes to webinars and policies and the education and informing people about what's going on, that there's a tremendous service going on. I think where maybe it gets a little tricky in trying to keep everybody happy when it comes to taking positions. And I think it's a clear effort to be able to parse the different opinions, which can be very different, and come up with a position. And I know that's I'm not sure what norm that. I'm not sure we can work harder at that. I don't know how we can do better at it, but it's extremely difficult to do it. And I guess if the one thing we could do is possibly have more time dedicated to the development of the agendas and for the legislative session and for the resolutions, and have more discussion among all the members. But other than that, I mean, I think it's a real privilege to serve on this board in general.
Thanks, Barbara. Okay, Michael, do you want to go, and then Nancy, and then if I'm missing somebody, please let me know.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add about what other people have said. I do want to, I think, highlight the onboarding process as something that could use some improvement, I guess. It takes a little while to get up to speed, and maybe just the complexity of what we deal with will always make that the case. But I felt it took me a little while to kind of get my feet under me. I'm I think one of the more relatively new members.
Thanks, Michael.
You want me now?
Yes, Nancy, go.
Okay. I think one of the norms that I think that we do very, very well is getting information out to all of the members. You are Johnny on the spot on getting out information from testifying and from calling emergency meetings, and we can get it done right away, especially with Jim and his finances. And I think we do that very well. And I've been I am I love this. I absolutely love the VSBA. They have helped me immensely in so many ways as I became a more involved member. And then after I became chair, they really stepped up their capabilities of not their capabilities, but their knowledge, and sharing it with me, and making it much easier for our board, which has been in a conundrum for several years now. And we've just started a really solid onboarding for our two new people that have never served on a board before. So was what we happened last 2 years ago. I can't say enough good about what comes out of this board from me. I have grown with knowledge. I have grown with confidence. I have made new friends that have shared abundantly and without any reserve at all, anytime and every time that I have asked for help. So I think that's something that we do very well as a board. One norm we could strengthen. Oh, that's a really hard one for me. I can't think of anything just right off the top of my head.
That's okay, Nancy.
Maybe
You don't need
come to me in a little,
to answer all of
a
them.
little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
I just think that we continue to do the sharing and the I guess just especially the sharing of your knowledge and your expertise and your experiences. I think that we do that very well, and I really appreciate the ones of you that have
Thank you, Nancy.
been so gracious. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. I don't see anybody that is not. Am I missing anybody? Please speak now. Otherwise, I'm gonna first thank you for reflecting, because it helps us plan, and it helps us as we lead and make sure that we are addressing everybody, and that everybody feels comfortable. I do want to just share quickly what we do for onboarding, just in case that there is any questions about that. We do spend, so Sue and I usually do it together, and we bring whoever is onboarding to the office and try to get them to meet the staff. And we spend about a couple of hours, if not more, and either have lunch or breakfast and make sure that they understand the norms, their roles and responsibilities, and do a little sharing about, especially the conflict of interest. But and Sue can add to that, but just, and we can always do better, but we do it very intentionally with the new board members. A couple of times, maybe one time we have done it online because that was what was easiest for everybody, but most of the time we try to do it in person so they're familiar with the staff and also feel welcome. So that's what we do so far, but this is all great information, and thank you again, and I hope everybody had a chance to read the packet tonight, because we're really going to need it today. And that last email that you got last night, we're going to jump right into our legislative report. I'm going to give it to you, Sue and Mark, and then we have some work to do within that legislative report. Go ahead, Sue and Mark.
We'll try to be efficient. So we plan to spend most of the time for this agenda item on the VSA policy proposal that I emailed to the board yesterday. Before we get to that, Mark is going to provide a brief update on S227 and H205, and I have 2 slides I can share on that while he's doing that. And just before I hand that over to Mark, as far as school budgets go, I know you all, the results of that. I wanted to let you know that VSBA is hosting an online forum tomorrow, Thursday, March 12th at 6 p.m. for the members of boards who need to revote their budgets if they didn't pass. So that will involve debriefing the elections from last week to glean insights and discuss strategies for getting those budgets passed. And it's open to any school board member from the 19 boards that are in this situation. You don't have to be a chair. Advanced registration is suggested, and that was highlighted in our weekly update yesterday. So I will hand it to you, Mark, now, and I will see if I can share my screen.
Okay. Well, you got things in your packet about both 227 and 205, and because this is a fast-moving issue, both of those things you got in your packet are already out of date. So 227 is dealing with immigration policy. We just start with 205. Okay.
Sorry, I'll go back up.
I figured 205 is more of a mess. 207, so this is immigration protocols in Vermont schools. It passed out of Senate Education yesterday. So it is working its way through. VSA and VSBA spent some time talking with Senator Ron Hinsdale and the Legislative Council to try and restructure this bill so that it actually flowed better. The AG's office also got involved dealing with how the matter should be presented. But this deals with any law enforcement agency that is coming to schools on immigration related matters. So it started off with just federal law or federal immigration, and apparently the Second Circuit has some problems when you just identify a single law enforcement agency when other law enforcement agencies would be doing the exact same thing but wouldn't be covered. So we try to deal with that. AOE is responsible for drafting a model policy by January 1st, 2027. The SBA is called out specifically to offer assistance in creating that policy. AOE also needs to draft model administrative procedures that outline some of the things that are set out within this bill, and VSA will help put those procedures together. And that would be inherent on school boards to adopt either their own version of the policy or the model policy at the start of the 27-28 school year. The AG's office is also going to be compiling an immigration resource guide that would go out to superintendents who would then distribute it to students and staff. And that would include a number of different resources to help guide through the chaos that we live in today. So if there's any questions on 227, otherwise I'll move on to 205. Neil.
This is, my comments are based on the version of the bill that I read yesterday, right? So I don't know what is, if any of this has changed, but in the beginning, in the purpose section and in the early parts, there was reference that this would apply to both public and independent schools in Vermont. But then the subsequent language consistently referenced superintendents and school boards. And so I was confused as to whether or not this does apply to all schools or just public
It is
schools.
intended to apply to all schools. They did change the like school boards have to adopt it by a certain date. There's then a new section, independent schools need to adopt it under their procedures. So I kind of breezed over it. VSBA is helping write the model policy, as is the Independent School Association. So both are, maybe the language can be cleaned up a little bit better to make sure that the distinction is there when it gets over to the House. But the intention is that all schools are going to be dealing with this issue.
And then all of the references to responsibilities of superintendents, how is that being handled?
Most of that has been moved around so that that is being dumped into the procedures. So there are a list of things that the bill is asking schools or superintendents to do, but there's a catch-all at the very end of that list that says the AOE, in conjunction with VSA's assistant, will create a procedure that then goes out that covers the items that are set forth in this statute. So there are things that superintendents are required to do, but it's been lessened so that it can actually be created in procedure as opposed to in statute, if that makes sense. Anything else? All right, 205 hit us 2 weeks ago out of nowhere. It wasn't even on our bill tracking. So this act has been floating around since 2018. There was a whole summer study group that was trying to figure out how to deal with removing agreements or non-compete agreements within employment categories. And somehow, we have our own theories of how, but somehow a couple of weeks ago, a line got added to this bill saying this does not deal with Title 16, because in Title 16, we have 16 VSA 1752A that says teachers can't leave. If they're under contract, they can't go work for another public school during that school year. And NEA jumped on that, said that's a non-compete clause, and so that should be removed. The amendment that you saw from Representative Hedrick has been updated twice now, so we're on the third amendment, and right now the amendment is to completely strike that clause from Title 16. And the VSBA and VPA have both testified before House Commerce. We just got Pietro Lynn will be testifying tomorrow to discuss the issues. NEA says it's just clearly a non-compete and it really hurts their membership. And our statements have been numerous, saying, first of all, we've known about this 2 weeks and you want it to go out of committee this Friday. There's been no testimony, there's been no research, there's been no analysis. Anytime the committee has asked us questions, a lot of them are, we don't know. We don't know if there are other states that do it this way. We don't know if there are other professions that have this type of restriction, because there's been no study on it. So you can't just get rid of a major underpinning of how we have our collective bargaining agreement structured just because. Our second one is this is not a non-compete clause. This is a narrowly structured consequence to breaking a contract. So there is consequences if you decide to break your contract, just like any contract. And third, we've said, well, okay, if you want to get rid of any consequences for teachers to break their contract, then it should be equal. So the school board should be able to say come August, hey, we thought we needed 2 second grade teachers. We only need 1. Sorry, don't need you. Bye. They're not happy about that one either. But the NEA is not giving up. The House Commerce is saying that they will probably just have to kill this bill. You will all have just a few minutes ago gotten an action alert going out to principals, superintendents, and school board members saying this essentially what I just said. The NEA put out their action alert last week when they were supposed to be negotiating with us. So that really made House Commerce upset because we had been ordered to try and come to consensus. And in the meantime, they went behind everyone's back and had their membership start slamming the legislature with, you can't do this to us, we're poor teachers. So we are doing what we can to make sure that at least this gets a slow walk and gets discussed. This would be very impactful on negotiated contracts, on collective bargaining, to suddenly not have the ability to stop teachers from just leaving when they wanted to go somewhere else without consequence. I see, Mark, you got a question?
Well, getting off track a little bit, and this is kind of nuanced. As we try to bring the independent schools into the fold around accountability and stuff like that, why would it just say public schools, that they couldn't be hired at another public school, but any school in the state of Vermont that accepts public funds? Again, kind of a nuance to all this, with the bigger issue being what you're tackling, but
well, we're dealing with a statute that was written over 100 years ago. And that's one of the NEA's points, is that this is a very old statute. It predates collective bargaining. They've been trying to get rid of it for a while. So it is what it is. It does limit them to moving on to a different public school district within Vermont. So if you're a teacher and you leave because you want to retire, we can't do anything. If you want to leave because you're leaving the state, can't do anything. You want to go work for a private school, can't do anything. You want to go work for a different industry, can't do anything. It is only limited to keeping public schools from stealing employees from one another. Michael.
Yeah, just two comments on H205. I forwarded that notice to our board. Our boards, we're one of the districts that could really suffer from having people bail on us in late August. On the first one, I just want to kind of make my standard, comment about model policies that we're required to adopt verbatim. It's basically a regulation that bypasses the whole administrative procedure process for creating regulations, and I really don't like that. It's one of the ways which we've gotten lots of mandates dumped on us with very little way to stop them.
I think that the wording they have right now is that school districts need to adopt a policy that deals with this issue at least as cohesively as the model policy. If you want to make changes to it, you're welcome to do that, but it needs to cover at least the minimum of what's set forward in the model policy. So there's still freedom to do it. It's just
as a practical matter, you adopt the model policy, because deviation is going to cause you problems with arguing about whether it's more or less strict.
Yep.
So they're really this is the favorite way they seem to have now, in order to basically impose regulations without going through the regulatory process and rulemaking.
Understood.
Yep.
Those
Thank
are the
you,
two
Mark.
kind of hot ones right now, but Jim.
Yeah, since this one is a sort of NEA driven one, I'll ask about the other NEA driven item, which is healthcare. And if there's any update on, I understood that the NEA seems to be fighting relatively successfully against. Where does that stand?
So the House bill will not make crossover, the bill that has our preferred language in it. We're still working to get at least some of the language into a relevant bill.
Is there anything we can do to help it? We push for, I think a lot of us have pushed really hard on our legislators. And I'm pretty disappointed that they still seem to be quaking in fear of the NEA.
I know. I could probably send the board an email in the next week or so, letting you know some things that you could do. I'd like to sort of check in with our lobbyist about that.
I just think this is such an important point and there has to be some, understanding at this point with everything we've gone through with Act 73 about the importance of this particular item. It's like, just wake up, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mentioned it in every piece of testimony that I possibly can. In fact, I mentioned it yesterday to House Ways and Means and House Ed when we talked about budgets passing and the health and benefits being a cost driver. Okay to move ahead, Floor?
I think so.
Yes, so I was just wondering if we'd move into our big piece.
Yes, yes.
Is that the one that you want to go next?
Yes. So yeah, I'll
Can I
just
get
give
us
a
started
quick
and
intro.
yeah,
Intro.
yeah, go ahead.
So yesterday, the Vermont Superintendents Association put forward a policy proposal in House Ed, which is designed to convince the legislature that it can make incremental progress toward the goals of Act 73 without the need to agree on a redistricting map, because that's seeming increasingly unlikely. And the proposal doesn't really contain new ideas, but it draws from the work of the redistricting task force, the Commission on the Future of Public Education, and some pieces of Act 73. I emailed a link to the slides and the video to all of you yesterday afternoon. I hope you had a chance to review them prior to this meeting, and I'm going to turn it over to you now, Floor.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions, but first I just want you all to be honest. Did you had a chance to either listen to a testimony or look at the slides? If you didn't, please raise your hand. Is there a copy? Just be super honest. I just want to see who hasn't. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Not because it's just because we. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that what it was?
Raising your hand if you have read it or haven't.
Haven't. Have not. So
I didn't watch the testimony. I looked
4.
at the slides, but I didn't watch the testimony.
Yeah,
Okay,
Are we supposed to raise our hand if we? I'm sorry. Are we supposed to raise our hand if we did not?
Did not.
Is that what you said, Floor? Did not?
Yes. Did not do
my
one
hand's
or
down
the other.
because I did. Okay.
Okay. So then we can move ahead. We just went, because otherwise we were going to take the time to go through the slides, which will cut out time from us talking. But I also wanted everybody to be informed, because otherwise there's no point in having this discussion right now. So what we want to do, because we can, I hope that everybody has their criteria. Oh, I'm blurry because I don't know why my camera was set to blurry, but I hope everybody has sort of an idea still in mind, kind of their criteria. I know that this is not a map. We put that criteria to evaluate any proposal, but I think that this criteria really helps us also set some common understanding across our board that we work really hard to do. So as you listen to the testimony or read through the slides, in parentheses policy proposal, what are the parts that you feel more aligned with our VSBA criteria and your region? Because I know that sometimes we have a hard time separating our experience with the region, and your region also informs some of how you were reading it. So, and then where do you feel tension and uncertainty? So I wanted to start with the tension part and we're going to take very detailed notes. I know that some of you had more time than others, but I don't want to give you my opinion right away, but there was a lot of common sense through this proposal, and I think they did a really good job putting it together. So if we could, is there any real tension in what you read? I put the question, and I was just typing it as we were formulating it. So in my mind, so it might not. I didn't even do capital for what, but. And I want to spend at least 20 minutes on this or more if necessary, but could we be in support of this policy? Are there any huge tensions or uncertainties as you read this policy proposal? Wow. So no tension. So where do you see alignment? This is great. It's going to be a short conversation. Where do you see alignment? Wow, kind of
I,
quiet
I
group.
emailed,
This is
I emailed Chelsea and I said that I thought she did a really good job yesterday. I think that she has taken, I appreciated the fact that she took things that have already been put out there and she came up with some kind of practical things that have already been addressed that could, put forward, really meet the goals of Act 73 using a scalpel rather than a sledgehammer. So overall, I think that was, I know what she was trying to do. And I think that this is definitely a bunch of scalpels that the legislature could move forward with. And I agree with many of them overall, but I'm not looking to take a scalpel to her document. I'm looking to support it overall.
great. And that's a great way to start, Mega, because we're not looking through this conversation to do any rewriting of the slides either, right? It's just finding alignment and if there's any uncertainty. Mark and then Jim.
I guess the biggest thing for me is policy problem number 2, the foundation formula. I think this is handled really, really well, and that was one of my biggest concerns. That would get pushed through without being thoughtful. So I'm really pleased about that being in here.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, not going to hear much different from me. Frankly, went through it. I did touch base with Chelsea as well because I we could nitpick, but at the same time, it was extremely important that the House Education Committee hear an honest assessment with a lot of ideas because they're utterly lacking in ideas. And honestly, I watched most of the presentation, and she was very honest with them, which was very refreshing because I think it just feels sort of like the dog needs to be swat with a newspaper on the nose. Here something has to be done to get them to move in a more positive direction. And I think this was a great way to present that in a non-threatening way, but a very useful way.
Thank you, Jim. Clayton?
I didn't have a chance to watch the testimony. I read through the slides. I don't have a question, but also, to what extent is there this is the third or fourth time that the VSBA and the VSA have pushed right back with the documents created by the redistricting task force back to Senate Ed, said, look at your own papers, or back to House Ed, look at your own work and reference your own work that was done. And is there tension with that? I mean, I think that's where the tension is. Here is this work that was done that you're ignoring. And I just don't know if the continued pushback on these things that the governor's telling them to ignore is are they seeing this? Are they ignoring those documents? Because it certainly seems like the governor is. He threw those in the trash. But I don't know if in that room, and again, I can watch it and figure out for myself what the vibe is. But in that room, are they ignoring this stuff as well? And then, like Mark Clough said, my major concern now is that they say we don't need a map to force down the foundation formula. We'll just take away the money. So referencing the foundation formula and that there are other ways to skin this cat, such as it is, as opposed to skinning the cat, is very helpful. And that's what I pulled from this more than anything. Don't do that.
Okay, that's great, Clayton. We can spend a little time at the end talking about what the climate is, because I think they're so focused on wanting to do something. But let's wait until everybody has a chance to go, and then we can discuss your question. Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I felt a little bit that we've been behind the VSA for most of this process. That's a little concerning always, that we always seem to be reacting to things they've put out. But that's neither here nor there, really. One thing I was really concerned about is VSA endorsing the AIR interpretation of weighting for tuitioning districts, or are they saying that it ought to be fixed?
I don't know the answer to that, Michael. I don't think they're endorsing that. But Chelsea has offered to jump on if we have questions, so I could text her and ask her to come on, and if y'all would like.
Because that interpretation is absolutely devastating to those of us that have, significant tuitioning expenses.
Great. Sue is on the case with Chelsea. Emily?
Thanks. I am in support of the VSBA testimony and statement that they put forward, and I really appreciate the sense of urgency that Chelsea's bringing to districts who can't pass budgets like Barry. It's really discouraging to be in a climate where people are saying things are back to normal and the people at the bottom can't pass their budgets. So I appreciated her bringing attention to that and also really pushing for that we need tax reform now. Like, this system that we're in now is not working either.
Thank you, Emily. Barbara?
Similar to what's already been said, I mainly have a question about the strategy. And first of all, I think it's excellent to come up with these specific things to a legislature that's sitting there like trying to figure out and ignoring their own information. And I also want to agree completely that the foundation formula is probably our biggest threat right now, because what it really is taking away the money and just saying, here, you're going to have the money the way we say, and it's going to be a lot less than a lot of you need. But also, I would just like to know, and maybe this isn't the time to discuss it, but really it's the governor that seems to have intimidated the legislature in reacting to their own task force and also being afraid to do what's in the, go ahead, Flora. Anyway.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yeah, I just want to know about the strategy. Do we all have to have a strategy with the governor so the legislature can overrule him, basically, which is, I think, if he continues the way he is, that's what's going to have to happen. Because he's not going to want this as the result of the session. I don't think.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had one thing to add. Since, foundation formulas come up multiple times, I think, the way that it was presented, made it, I guess I would definitely push to go a little bit further on the work that the foundation formula needs. Right now, it kind of sounded when she was testifying and all as if, well, there are things that are missing and they need to be considered, and, how do you phase it in? And then Conlon pretty much just said, oh, it's phased over 5 years. So, to me, I'm reading it as a Peter Conlon thinking that the foundation formula as presented, it's pretty much all right now, and it just needs to be phased in over time. And it needs a whole lot more work than that. I would encourage us to, to point, the problem with the biggest problem with the foundation formula that we're all feeling around here is because, the current foundation formula they trotted out has dire circumstances and great circumstances for different districts, and that is sort of a, I think it's clear that it is not at this point what they came up with is probably not a fully fair foundation formula, and they need to work to get it to be a better formula.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Gaston.
Yeah, I think, my reaction when I went through was that I was really surprised that this whole thing with the CLA did not come up. And I think that's just a glaring error and absolutely must be. For instance, for us in Troy, our school budget went up 8%. Our tax rate went up 14 cents. Before the CLA adjustment, our tax rate would have gone down 2 cents. And that's not a miscalculation. And so, this whole notion that CLA and tying education to how properties are selling in a community just seems to be very wrong. And it especially seems wrong currently, where it seems that school boards need to sort of modify their budgets based on how well or how poorly properties are selling in their communities. And I just am really kind of surprised that it wasn't mentioned anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaston. And I see Chelsea join us so she can help us answer that question. And just as a reminder, I'm going to step off and Megan is going to continue to run the meeting in 5 minutes. Go, Chelsea.
Thank you for joining us, Chelsea.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all.
The question was from Michael Inner. So Michael, could you ask the question again?
Got to ask it off mute.
Are you muted, Michael? Because we're not hearing you.
There we go. Yeah, there's some language in the slides which references the AIR report on applying weights in tuitioning towns that you mentioned sort of should be addressed. And the question was, are you endorsing their interpretation, or are you saying their interpretation should be corrected? The exact text is clarification about applying equalized pupil weights in towns and unified school districts that tuition students in one or more grades. And it references a report from the AIR, which basically says don't apply a lot of the weights.
Yeah, so the architects of our current funding system wrote that memo to indicate that the weights are applied incorrectly in our current system in their modeling for non-operating districts. So it is to apply and correct based on the recommendations of Dr. Tammy Colby and Dr. Bruce Baker, the corrections to the foundation formula that they're the architects of.
Okay, so you're endorsing that interpretation from AIR.
Yes.
Absolutely oppose that. It's devastating to tuitioning districts. I can go into a long explanation of why, but if that's in there, I will vote against endorsing this proposal. If you want the explanation, I'll be glad to give it.
So I think that's more appropriate for when I'm not here, because this isn't about VSA's endorsement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Chelsea.
But I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Yeah, of course. We are all going to clap to you, Chelsea. We have been singing your praises. It was amazing. And thank you for putting this together. And I think overall there is great, support. And we're just thankful for the work. So thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate you all.
Okay.
Thanks, Chelsea.
Thanks, Chelsea. Bye. Okay, Megan, I'm leaving you with a packet. Okay. Wrap it up. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Sorry to leave you. Bye.
Okay. Outside of the AI, you guys have never had to do this for the VSBA before, so here we go. Outside of the AIR issue, and I have a very different approach than Floor, so we're gonna get through this. Outside of the AIR issue, which I'll come back to in a moment, are there any other comments about this that we feel we need to address right now? Seeing none, Michael, you want to explain in briefly your concerns overall on the AIR issue, which I'm not familiar with?
I don't even know what the letters mean. So, in all honesty, I don't know what those 3 letters mean in this context.
AIR is the Beltway Bandit group that designed some of this stuff. It's a consultant.
So Tammy Colby comes from AIR, correct?
Does she? Okay.
Yes.
Is that correct? Yes. So AIR is the group that has developed the foundation formula.
Out of Arlington, Virginia.
Got it.
She's out of Vermont.
Well, doesn't matter to me, because the proposal basically we're already having problems with tuition crushing districts like ours that have a combination of operating grades and non-operating grades. It's easily it's cannibalizing our local schools. The weights should be applied, because when the tuitions are already, we're paying $22,000, $23,000 in tuition. That's way above the excess spending threshold. And it's even above the excess spending threshold times the secondary school weight. If you apply that, with the schools set their tuition rates, I'm sure they're blending in the fact that some of those students that we're sending, have all the issues that are accounted for in the weighting formula, the economical disadvantage, the English language learners, things like that. And it just means that without the weights, we're losing even more money every time we tuition somebody out. I mean, we're capped at 16,350 or something like that before we hit the excess spending threshold, and we're paying $23,000 in tuition regularly to the receiving schools. And the foundation formula, just makes that worse. So it's an absolute red line for districts like the ones out here in the islands that have a combination of operating schools and tuitioning. It's crushing and cannibalizing our K-8 programs already. And that's before this kind of change.
Jim?
Yeah, I kind of want to ask Michael, because I'm in a district that has a similar situation of a mix of tuition paying, and we don't operate all grades. And very strongly, I think this is one reason the foundation formula needs a lot of attention, is because my understanding of it was that when the foundation formula would be fully implemented, then the schools that we're normally paying tuition to, they would receive the foundation formula amount.
Ooh.
They would not be able to continue to, charge whatever, if they were going to accept public dollars, they would accept the foundation formula amount for, in our case, high school students. And if that were the case, would you continue to have the issue?
Well, that just brings up another issue, is that we're still responsible for all the special education add-on expenses.
Yeah, but that's with any students, you're responsible for that, where, whether it's in your schools elsewhere, and it can be more expensive certainly when you're paying tuition to somebody and they're setting those special ed costs. But that's actually one of the reasons, we've been arguing for years that the special ed rules with respect to independent schools have to treat them like any other school, that they can't charge whatever the heck they feel like. I think just from my perspective, that's the more logical route to go, is to essentially say, if independent schools want to have our public tuition dollars going to them, then they need to essentially act like a public school, to take the foundation formula amount and use the same sort of methodology for determining special ed costs. At least that's what we're advocating for. So
I don't know if your situation is different from ours, but we find that, but when you throw in the special ed costs, easily half of our money is going to receiving schools as things are now. This would make that worse.
Neil?
Yeah, so just to, I guess I'm trying to clarify, Michael, your concern. The concern is not with the logic around the application of the weights for a non-operating district, and your concern is about the resulting implication that would have for you locally in being able to pass a budget, to be able to fund your system. So you don't disagree that the logic around why the weights should not apply to an operating district is inaccurate. That's not your opposition. Your opposition is just the resulting loss of funding that you would see if they didn't apply.
I think that because as I said earlier, the tuition that gets charged to some extent includes the extra costs that.
Well, do we know that for sure?
Students and ELLs.
But how do we know that?
How do they not? Because the allowable tuition includes those sorts of costs, and there's a formula for what the allowable tuition can be, and that those costs are included. in that calculation. And pretty much everybody's charging us the maximum they can under the allowable tuition formula, even going back retroactively.
Well, but that's the argument that the weights should not apply because that amount's already baked in. Yeah, interesting.
Barbara?
I just have a question about, we don't have a lot of private people sending out to private schools in our district, and so I'm not as familiar with the situation. But in places like Grand Isle, and we're limited in places to send. Do school districts have options of other private schools? Like you say, if they're not going to play by our rules, then they can't have our tuition dollars. So then are some towns faced with nowhere to send their schools? I'm just curious about how that works. I mean, can we offhandedly just tell a town that you can't use those schools because they're not behaving? You can't use those private schools, but yet there is no other place to send their child to school. That's my question.
I was under the impression that with Act 73, they've put limits on the overall number of independent schools that those dollars could go to. It's down to whatever the number is now. In addition to that, you could send it to any public school. Is that correct, Sue?
Right, but in a sense of practicality, if you
I don't know if I would assume that we're still capable of sending children to school this year, but I don't know. I'm not aware of any practical issues where there's nowhere to send the student.
Now, but I'm talking about the kinds of things that are going to happen if there's more.
Well, I don't know. I mean, those are all the questions that are outstanding, I think, right?
Right. I mean, it just speaks to the idea that all this change is not being thought out, all the ramifications.
Well, I agree with you on that. Clayton and Jim, and then I'm gonna try and bring us back to this question. Clayton.
So in our little corner of the state, there are not, if you eliminated private schools, there wouldn't be enough public schools to send children to. And really specifically with the major independents that are up here, there's a carve out in Act 73 that would allow them to charge whatever they felt they needed for the tuition. And that applies to any independent school that is also a comprehensive school, which means if they have a CTE center. So there's a carve out in the law itself that would allow a private school to charge. And this goes to Michael's issue in that if you're tuitioning kids and those kids and the tuition itself is weighted automatically by its very existence and their ability to charge what they say, not what the law says, then they've baked the weight in already. But if under the foundation formula, the weight doesn't follow the kid, then you have to steal from a third grader to pay for a 10th grader. And you have to eliminate a kindergarten to continue to fund your high school in the foundation formula as it currently sits. And I think that's his issue. Am I close, Michael?
Yeah.
But Clayton, that's only in your area. That's those two schools.
So I think that with public school weighting, I think it's the weight needs to follow the kid. I think that's the issue. And so in our particular circumstance, to point to Barbara's issue, that does in fact exist. That situation could potentially exist. It really only exists in this corner that I know about. Michael's issue is that they're tuitioning out so many of their students that when and where they're tuitioning, everyone you lose money on compounds itself.
Thank you. Can I just go back to the policy proposal itself? And I don't know if we should have let Chelsea go or not, but the first policy proposal, number one, is that the foundation formula is incomplete, inequities persist, and that costs grow. And I think that we all agree that that's number, what's this one? It's 12. So I think that we all agreed with that, right? And then where this portion comes up about it is the next policy proposal is make fixes to the current system while making important decisions related to the foundation formula. So I thought that this discussion about the AIR report was for the current system. Like if you look at what she is recommending in her policy proposal, that reference to the AIR report is for making fixes to the current system while making important decisions related to the foundation formula. So that's she's kind of bifurcated it out separately as I look at it. So the money following the foundation formula money following a student wouldn't happen until the foundation formula was put in place, as I understand it. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. Michael.
Yeah, I did put in the chat that for sparsity in small schools, should that ever be an issue with high schools? The logic in the letter makes sense, right? Because that doesn't affect anything. But one of my fears in reading something like this is that this will be implemented under the current system, as was mentioned, and not as part of the Act 73, turn the money over to the high school, because there's less impact in that situation.
But I don't think that I don't think the proposal that they're putting forward is to put this forth in the current system. That's not the policy proposal she's putting forward, or the VSA is putting forward.
That's unclear to me, because this memo is to a large extent pre-Act 73.
Jim?
No, I just have to, pretty much disagree. This is because it's very important to us. We've been following it closely. I would say that, this raises, the questions you raise are good questions. I think the intent is not to do what you're suggesting they're looking at doing. I think if you look through, following all the discussions on foundation formula, I think, clearly the intent was, currently we have a system that's complex for setting what you can pay in tuition. Because, in my district, we've got a very big SU. We don't have any high school other than independent schools in our SU boundaries. And so we send a lot of kids we send all of our, we don't operate a high school. So, it's a very significant issue. And, on one of the problems with foundation formula is everybody was listening to Tammy and all, and she was doing some good work and all, but they're kind of leaving it up to, so they did the work and they aren't paying enough attention to implementation. When they did start paying attention to implementation, they seem to be going in the direction of, once the foundation formula is in place, then that's what schools get, whether they're public or independent or whatever. They get that amount of money. And that's my understanding. I would absolutely agree with you that we have to hold their feet to the fire to ensure that that's the case.
Okay, given the discussion, do I have I think it might be helpful for Sue or others to, if we vote on whether or not we are, and I also want to kind of highlight that we had no concerns or no resounding tension points as it relates to this when we opened up this discussion. And I think that we all were highly supportive of it, understanding this one issue, and I don't think that we're looking to take a scalpel to it. So do I have a motion to what are we looking for, Sue, to endorse the VSA's proposal?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm happy to make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Michael enters.
That I can't endorse it with that.
Understand. Yep. Amy or others, did you get what you needed from a count perspective? Perfect. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that discussion. Sue, do I turn it back to you for further discussion of legislative update?
That was our last legislative update discussion item.
Okay, thank you. I hate making I do hate having a conversation go on longer in a meeting. I like to move them forward, but thank you, Mark, for highlighting, just pointing out to the issue of the foundation formula. There was testimony this morning before House Ed about the modeling of a foundation formula, which highlights some of the major concerns that I know many of us have about the foundation formula. It was designed to reflect what would happen if a foundation formula following Peter Conlon's map, which is not supposed to be Peter Conlon's map, but if the Conlon map was put in place in FY26. So that was quite eye-opening. And when we look at this, I know that it's very much focused on how much money every district would get, but it doesn't have the corresponding tax implications, which would also be much higher for lower spending districts and much lower for higher spending districts. So, but at the same time, the JFO was very clear that there are many open items as it relates to that. So I watched that House Ed testimony this morning, and it's something that I'm very focused on. If anyone else would like to chat about it offline.
I can put a link to that, those numbers in the chat here.
Yeah, Mark did earlier. Mark did
Oh,
at 5.
great. Okay.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. Moving along to now I've lost my agenda. So what is next?
Okay, I think the next, unfortunately, is Sue called me up a couple of weeks ago and said, "Could you do your VPIC update for the year?" And I said, "Oh, sure." Unfortunately, I apologize. I should have gotten out. VPIC does have, I am the VPIC is the Vermont Pension Investment Commission, and I am the VSBA's representative on the commission. The commission oversees the investment of all the pension funds for the teachers, for the state employees, and for municipal employees. We also recently took on the other post-employment benefits, overseeing the investment of those as well. What I should have done, which I did last year when I gave you an update, and I will correct this, I should have sent you a copy of the annual report of VPIC, which was out, about a month ago. It provides more information that you're going to want to see on the investment approach, the investment performance, and all. But if you like that sort of thing, it is a fabulous report that really provides, a great overview of where things are going. I unfortunately, as I said, I spaced on the fact that I was presenting today, but still I can give you a little overview. I will send the annual report, but the performance last year was actually quite good. Just to kind of give people a sense, the way the funds are, VPIC does a few things. One, VPIC has to choose a rate that is, we need to oversee the actuarial view of related to all the investment activities. So we have to determine an inflation rate that's used in all the calculations for the year, an assumed rate of return, which is the rate of return that we choose as a reasonable, very long-term rate of return for the funds. It doesn't mean that that's exactly our target. We always shoot for that in the current environment, or that we expect to earn that in any particular year. But the rate of return, that long-term rate of return, is 7%. That is used in the calculations of whether the programs are fully funded or not. As you guys probably know from, or may know, our programs are significantly underfunded. They have been for quite a while. That was a number of years ago. The legislature decided that they didn't really feel like putting the money into it for some years, and that had a tendency to compound and create a bigger problem. Legislature did a little bit of catch up recently, and thank goodness the investment performance has actually been very good. We know that markets have been good in the past couple of years, not so good today. Wars have a tendency to do that and stuff, but the performance has been very positive over the past few years, putting us sort of in a surplus position in terms of having earnings. It's very complex and messy how the accounting for this stuff works, but to give you a general sense, our performance has been good. The VPIC, what we do is it's a very conservative, in my book, approach to investing. Most of it is in indexes, and it's even in recent years we've been hurt a little bit by VPIC didn't want to have overexposure to things like the Magnificent Seven, those massive massive companies like, like Google and Microsoft and NVIDIA and stuff like that. So they invested in a more conservative approach to that, but performance has been very good. The portfolio is, again, mostly indexes in a very diversified portfolio. They also do to, the way returns are actually, you get returns up to the point, close to what the target is to also have a bit of private equity and private credit allocation tied into that as well, which VPIC is actually, the last several years, VPIC has been one of the best in the country as far as, public pension plans and returns on those funds. And I can tell you from sitting on VPIC now for 5 years, they are very careful and very conservative in the way they approach those investments. You might have seen some negative things about private credit and private equity in recent times. There are reasons to be concerned, and some folks in the market are having to sell things because they need liquidity or there are issues. VPIC has invested in a very conservative way in those, so that is not really a problem for VPIC. In private credit and equity, the allocations to each are 11% of the portfolio, and the draws on those funds are extremely predictable. So they're really in pretty good shape. So, VPIC, again, I appreciate being put in a position to be the representative of the VSBA on that. And I can, tell you that the job that the massive VPIC investment team they upped it, just like it's like VSBA. They actually upped it from 3 to 4 people. And the work they do with outside support and all is phenomenal. I will tell you that, one of the biggest things that causes me concern in case it ever comes up is we've been fighting for years. We have a fabulous team, great chief investment officer, deputy, great team, but they're paid like dirt. And that's been a problem we've been trying to fix for several years. What we found is it's really hard to fight within government because they all view these are investment professionals, and you compete for the investment professionals with, other people who hire investment professionals. Those are not typically government employees, and they want to pay people like they are government employees, which we know that the pay tends not to be great. So we continue to work on trying to, one of my biggest concerns with a team as big as 4 overseeing roughly $8 billion of investments right now. If you lose your chief investment officer or deputy chief investment officer, and you're only willing to pay at a very low pay rate, you're never going to find very good people to replace them. So, that's why we continue to focus on that. So if you ever get an opportunity to speak up VPIC in front of legislators or the governor, please do so. So basically that's it. I will send you the annual report of VPIC out, or I'll send it to Sue and she can send it out to everybody. And I welcome any questions you might have on, after taking a quick look. You can just read the summary and then send me any questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim. Any questions for Jim? Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Sue, the annotated agenda is different than the other agendas. So are we going to communications with regions or strategic planning process?
I believe we're going to strategic plan monitoring.
Yeah, strategic plan monitoring report. Debbie and Amy, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Debbie and Amy are going to cover objective 1.1, which is increase engagement with local school board members.
Okay, I will start off. So key result 1.1.1 VSBA board members. This is about like our regional communications. We've provided 5 regional communications so far this year, with most of the regions sending out 4 or 5 of those communications, and everyone sending out at least 1. So thanks to everybody who sent them. And if your region's numbers are low because you're having any difficulties using the communication spreadsheet, please let me know. I'd be happy to work with you if you have any technical issues. We'll be asking you to send another communication this month. It's going to be on a number of topics, including reorganization, onboarding, resolutions, and regional gatherings. Updates to the board member list because of the recent elections are not complete in our database. So don't be surprised. You will probably get a number of bounce backs this time. But we will be working on it and have the updates done by the next month. The next one that I'm covering, and then we'll switch over to, I'm not going in order because I'm just going to do mine and then Debbie will do hers. The 1.1.4 is weekly update emails. So we continue to work to make our weekly emails more engaging and easier to read. The first 4 months of this fiscal year, our open rates were down by about 10% from the prior year, but we're really off to a good start this year with 2026, with January and February both showing more than 11% increase over the same period in 2025. And then the next KR is 1.1.5, negotiations. Use of our negotiations toolkit is down in fiscal year 26. We had an average of 36 hits per month in fiscal year 25, and so far this year we're averaging around 11 hits per month. I think that the fiscal year 25 numbers were very high at the beginning of the year last year when the toolkit was first announced and we had it in our weekly update. So that may have skewed our averages a little bit. But we will maybe look into an appropriate time to mention the toolkit again in our weekly updates, and hopefully that'll get our numbers up. And now Debbie.
So I'm going to be talking about KR 1.1.2, which is the annual conference. And the indicator reads, by June 30th, 2026, we will increase school board member participation at the VSBA annual conference with growth of 10% year over year. I did present on the conference back in November, but I'll refresh your memories that our final registration numbers for this past year, 2025, were strong. Our goal was to register 134 board members, which would be 10% over the 2024 number. And we exceeded that goal. We had 156 board members. The next KR is KR 1.1.3, which speaks to our awards program. And the indicator reads, by December 31st, 2026, we will increase the nominations of member districts for the Board Excellence Award from 2 in 2022 to 12. We have data for 2025, which was just last year. We had 6 nominations for the Board Excellence Award. So that it gets us halfway to our 12, to our goal of 12. I'm working with the awards committee again this year, staffing it. And so we'll be updating you on the work of that committee. And hopefully we'll meet that 12 goal this year. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Debbie. I'll continue on with objective 1.2, engage with other interested parties. And there are 3 KRs under this objective. The first one, and KR again is key result. So the first one is continue a positive working relationship with the Vermont NEA on issues of mutual interest. We do meet with the Vermont NEA weekly to support a positive working relationship on issues of mutual interest. And actually it's on Wednesday morning. So I just did it this morning. And despite, not being in agreement on the H205 Hedrick amendment that you got an action alert on today, that's something where we agree to disagree, but we just recently issued a joint press release with the Vermont NEA and the VSA in support of school district budgets statewide prior to the town meeting day votes. So that's a very positive step. KR 1.2.2 is statewide health care. Continue to provide necessary support to the employer commissioners on the statewide healthcare bargaining commission. VSBA is continuing to contract with a lobbying firm to support the legislative work related to addressing the cost of public school employees' health benefits. We drafted a bill to revise that process. That bill was introduced as H842 with 36 co-sponsors. The sponsor, Representative Pinsino, introduced the bill to the House General Committee on February 19th. So that was just within the past few weeks. And VSBA staff testified to the Senate Finance Committee on February 10th about the current process for statewide bargaining. And we also invited the employer commissioners to our legislative breakfast that was held in January so that they could tell their story to legislators. And then the last one is key result 1.2.3, which is about maintaining strong relationships with education coalition members and education agencies. So in addition to the Education Legislative Coalition, which brings together 7 education associations, the VSBA has been collaborating with the AOE staff on model policies, on district quality standards, governance standards, and other topics. And we work closely with VSBA to provide an up-to-date model policy manual, our offerings at the annual conference, and of course, support to the employer commissioners in the statewide bargaining process. So that's the end of our report on goal 1 in the strategic plan.
Thank you, Sue. Any questions for Sue or team? Okay, I think we move along to
Gaston has a question.
Oh, sorry, Gaston. Sorry.
All right, thank you. Listen, what I'm wondering is with the 11% or so increase in the open rate across the state, are you able to break that down for us by region? I ask only because, with all of this effort to send out messages from the regional reps, it certainly would be supportive to see an open rate go up, sort of equally across the state. Or is this 11% really focused on just a couple of different regions? I don't know if that's possible or not, but out of an interest. Thank you.
The way that I see the reports within MailChimp does not break it down by region. It's kind of the overall. This is the group of people they go out to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now I think I move on to communication with regions and strengthening regions, and I assume that's Sandra. Sandra?
I'm happy to go first, but
sorry.
Debbie, either way.
I'm not used to this yet, guys. I'll get really good.
I'm happy to go first and Debbie can tag on after if that's okay, Debbie. Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to tell you that we have launched our pilot program for the in-person regional gatherings. The Windsor region has scheduled their event for Wednesday, March 25th at 6:30 in the evening. They're going to hold it at the Hartford Area Career and Technology Center. We have an RSVP running right now for that one. Planning underway kicked off this morning for Kingdom North, and we are talking about late April for an event. So we've got a doodle poll ready to send out to clarify a date, and then Gaston's going to do some hard work of finding a site, and we'll talk about some food to go along with that. And then the third region is Central Vermont, and we have a planning meeting scheduled for the middle of April to kick that one off. These 3 regions all have both regional reps in place, and so that has been really, really helpful. You may have noticed we actually have 4 vacancies right now on our board, and so I will be reaching out to each and every region. And I'm just thinking that timing, giving a little bit more time so that regions have both of their reps on board will be helpful to move the work forward. So stay tuned for more updates. And if you are a rep from a neighboring region of any of these that we are soon to be holding, please feel free to attend, to observe, to learn from your neighbors. Just reach out to me to let me know so I can have an accurate count. Happy to take any questions if there are any.
Jim?
Quick comment anyway. I just wanted to, it sometimes gets frustrating, probably what Gaston's feeling. You try to reach out and connect with your region and you hear very little back. Just I did have a positive in that, always reaching out, and then we had one of the districts in our region had their budget turned down, And immediately I had to reach out from the chair of that board asking for help. And our wonderful VSBA reps, specifically Debbie, did a great job of taking care and helping support that person, and it was very much appreciated. So, even if you hear crickets on the other side, I guess people are getting it and they're realizing that when they need the help, they know where to go, which is I just found that very heartening.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Great. I love positive stories. Now is it any other questions for Sandra before we go to Debbie? Okay, Debbie. You're on mute.
Sorry, I don't have anything to add to the regional communications. I don't know if I'm forgetting something.
My thing you were gonna talk about the reorganization meeting webinar and toolkit. But
oh, okay.
We don't have to
I don't know how that has anything to do with regional communication, but
yeah, okay.
I think that it was going to be in the communication that they're sending out to their regions.
oh, right. And the ones that so there is a communication that has it gone out yet, Amy? The one for this month? No. So it will be going out as I think Amy mentioned when she spoke about her KR. We're asking you to send a communication to your region, and it has kind of a long list of things, including reorganization, as well as the resolutions process, which will be opening here very shortly, and onboarding, and probably forgetting one more topic. So you'll get that in the next day or two, I believe. Yep. Okay.
Thank you for being on the ball, Debbie, even when you didn't know you were going to be on the ball. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Now I think we move on to the strategic planning process and back to Sandra, unless my agenda is not correct.
You
Okay,
got it,
Sandra.
Megan. That's me again. So we are at a point in our multi-year plan to revisit our strategic plan, and that process will start with a revisit to the VSBA's beliefs, vision, and mission. We have secured the services of Dave Younds, who's a former superintendent and president of the VSA. He's going to assist you all in the process of reviewing those beliefs, vision, mission, and developing the overarching goals for the new strategic plan, which then the staff will work to write all of those KRs you've been hearing about. Dave will join the VSBA board meetings a little bit in April and a little bit in May, and then take most of the time on June 3rd for your retreat to dive into that work. And in between that, he may assign a little bit of reading. He may give you something to review just to keep the process moving forward and keep you thinking in between those meetings. I wanted to share a message from Dave that I think really will help you understand what to expect from him and the process. So he says the VSBA enters into this process from a position of strength. The beliefs, vision, and mission are clearly articulated, and the board has already engaged in meaningful, thoughtful work. The task ahead is not to revisit foundational questions, but to translate those commitments into a focused set of board-level goals that provide clarity, continuity, and direction for staff-led strategic planning. His approach is designed to respect the board's governance role, build directly on the successful process of 2022, and ensure that limited board time is used intentionally and productively. With deep experience working with Vermont public education boards, complemented by private sector governance and strategy experience that Dave has, he plans to support a disciplined facilitation with clear outcomes, and an approach will emphasize preparation, disciplined use of your time, and clear transitions from board deliberation to staff execution. So that's kind of his big picture. There's lots of steps to do over the next few months, and I'm the point person. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Sandra. Any questions about the strategic planning process? I know we're about to kick one off at work, and it's a big job. So thank you ahead of time for all that work.
Absolutely.
I believe I move on to consent agenda now.
Yes.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Jim? I have a second?
Clayton.
Clayton, second. We don't discuss it. I don't discuss them in mine. So all those in favor of approving the consent agenda?
I
Okay.
Bye.
Any abstentions? Are you good with that, Amy? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. New business. Any new business?
Sandra had one item to mention.
Thank you. That was on my agenda, but I wasn't about to call anybody out.
Hello again. I just wanted to mention that the annual VSBA Board of Directors self-evaluation is coming right up. We have revised the survey itself based on feedback that we collected in 2025. And so we're hoping you're going to appreciate that it has been shortened and the questions are really very focused. I think you will appreciate the new version. So Amy did her hard work of turning the questions into a Survey Monkey. That will go out April 1st, and we'll keep it open for a couple of weeks, and then we'll provide a summary of all of that feedback and information at the May board meeting. So watch your email for that around April 1st.
Thank you, Sandra. And that was one of the areas I thought we could improve on, our timely response to that, right? I'm pretty sure we've had to extend that a little bit. So thank you very much. And thank you for the work you did to streamline it a little bit. Any other new business? Okay, hearing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn 49 minutes early?
I'll move to adjourn.
Do I have a second? Or do I just, all those in favor? Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Clayton. Clayton. Always Clayton. Whatever you're thinking,
Always.
who was it? Always Clayton. Write it down.
Sorry, second.
thanks everybody.
Thank you, everyone.